Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is my first video, and in my channel you would see learning videos on SuccessFactors Talent Management Suite. In this video, I'm going to talk about background elements of people profile. This video could be helpful to admins, partners, or consultants to understand the usage of background elements and how employee-specific data can be updated or uploaded in SuccessFactors system. So in SuccessFactors, which is a core HR product, there are three types of employee data. First is the personal data, which is your first name, last name, date of birth, address, job title, etc. The second type of information is the background information, which is again employee specific information like your previous work experience, your qualification, your certification, your language skills, etc. And the third type of information is the rating information where you update the performance, potential, and other rating values of employees. Now, in this video, I'm going to discuss only the background information or the background element of people profile, and we'll see how these elements are created for SuccessFactor environment and how employees' data can be updated or uploaded in the system. I'm going to take you to the demo environment to show you various background portlets which are supported by people profile or the people profile of SuccessFactors. So this is my demo, and in order to go to people profile, you can go via my employee profile page. So there are various types of information as I told you before, but we're gonna check only the background information and also the background information specific to people profile, or I would say non-EC environment. So as you could see, I have so many types of information in my people profile. So this section, work experience within organization and previous employment, this is one of the blocks in people profile, and inside this block I have added this one background information, and this is the second background information. One thing which is very important to understand that SuccessFactors offer many standard background elements, or you can say background portlets, where you can add employee specific data. But if as a partner or if as a customer you think that you need to have more background specific data in your environment, then you can also create custom background elements in your system, and that custom background elements can be created from the front end, which is the admin center page if you have employee central enabled. And if in case you don't have employee central enabled, then the custom background elements can be created from the data model XML, which is accessible only through the backend. We call it as provisioning. So first, I'll just show you how the background elements look from the end user perspective, and then we'll go into the configuration of the background element, and then we'll see how you can update the data through import or directly from the people profile. So this is one of the background portlets. If you have to add the data, then you need to have the right access to that portlet, and that right access is given through the role-based permission, which we'll have a look in a while. So the way you can differentiate between the background information and the personal information is the personal information is also always one-to-one data. So for example, your first name, your last name, your address, your mobile number, it's always one-to-one data. However, when it comes to the background information, you need to provide more than one information to justify the background information. So if someone asks you your work experience, you need to provide them the start date, your end date, your title. Department is not always mandatory, but maybe some other information to have the complete information about your work experience. Similarly, if someone asks you about your previous employment, then you need to provide how long you had been in the organization, your title, and maybe some other relevant information. So that's how background information is different from the personal information. In the background information, you could see multiple fields which are reporting or which are under the background element. Right, so yeah, this is the background element or the background portlet. You have the start date, you have the end date, you provide the title, you provide the department. So let's just quickly update the data over here. And as I told you, you need to have the right access to the block. Then only you can update the data. Otherwise, you can only view the data if you don't have the right access. So randomly, I'm just selecting any value over here. And you save the data. So whatever data you save here, it will automatically be visible. And if you want to make an edit to the existing data, just click on edit and you can update your already added data over here. In background portlet, you can add, there is no such restriction on the number of the records which you add over here. But if at any point of time you want to restrict the number of addition or the number of the records over here, that can be done through the XML configuration only. But by default, if there is no such restriction defined, by default, you can add as many records as you want for any of the background element, not necessarily or not only for work experience, but for any of the background elements. So this is how you add data. It is also important to understand that the fields or the columns, whatever you say, the fields which you see inside the background element is always customizable. So if your business doesn't need department field or maybe need some other field in place of department, you can always add, you can always remove any field from the background element. So what I want to make very clear is that the background elements are customizable depending on your requirement. You can add any field. There are certain fields, as I told you before, that SuccessFactors has given you standard fields. You can make use of those standard fields within the standard background portlet. But if you want to add, custom fields, or if you want to add more fields other than the standard fields which are there, you are free to add any custom field within the background portlet. It's completely supported, and that we're going to have a look in a while. So this is how we add the portlet. We save the data. So this is one way of adding the information over here. The second way of adding the information is through the import process, and which is mostly done by the admins. Not everyone in the organization would have permission to import these employee specific data. Mostly this permission is given to the admins. So as an admin, you can go to the admin center and can export the information if needed, and with whatever modification that needs to be done, update the file and import the record back to the system. So before I show you the import and export of information of the background information, I'll first show you the configuration of the background information and the permission, and then at the end we'll go into the import and export of the background information. In order to see the configuration of background element, there are two ways. If your environment has Employee Central enabled, then directly from the admin center, if you look for Manage Business Configuration, from there you can access all of the background portlets or other type of information which I told you before directly from the admin center. So you need to go to the employee profile and click on background elements. So it has list of all the background elements which are there in your system. Most of them would be standard, but if you're as an admin, if you are looking over here, and if your partner has, for example, Google Docs, this is, I believe, is one of the custom uh, background portlet. It's not a standard background portlet. From an admin, you won't be able to differentiate between the standard or the background portlet. Uh, if you really want to differentiate between the standard and the background portlet, then you need to look for the standard background portlets which SuccessFactors provide by default, and then accordingly you can look for the other portlets, other background portlets which you have in your environment. So let's have a look on the inside work experience, because this is the one which we saw before. So as you could see, it has an ID over here. So this is the XML ID, and then this type ID. What you need to be very sure that the type ID for all of the background portlet has to be unique. So if you are creating a background portlet from here, create new, you can put whatever ID you want, but it has to be unique. And at the same time, the type ID has to be unique. You can give the label depending on your requirement. You can give the default label. You can make it the enable has to be yes, and the maximum entries. As I was telling you, if you have employee central, then you can restrict the number of maximum entries from this page also along with the XML. So if for example for the work experience, if you want employees to enter not more than 3 records, then put the maximum entries as 3 over here. You don't need to update anything over here. And then the data fields is basically the different fields which you see inside the background portlet. So again, depending on your requirement, you can create different data fields over here. And this is important. So if you click on the details, if you remember when we checked this work experience portlet, we saw that start date is a date field. So if you go to the details, you could see the ID, and along with that, you also see other details which are specific to this field, like you could see the field name. So this is the name which would appear on people profile when you look for work experience portlet. And the reason why you could see date for the start date, because this is a standard data XML ID which SuccessFactor has given. So if you want to make any field as a date field, then the ID has to be start date or it could be end date. And there are other standard date IDs for making any field as date, but start date and end date are two date type fields. So, and the other thing which is important is hidden. Make sure if you want to view the field in people profile, then make sure that hidden is set to no. Field name, you need to provide the field name over here, and the rest of the things you don't need to update. Again, if you are making a field as a pick list is mainly used for providing the drop down values for a field. So if you don't want to update the drop down value, or if you don't want to link any pick list, make sure it is no selection over here. And that's it. So in a similar way, you can create n number of fields over here if you want to create a custom field. So all these are the standard fields, but if you want to create a custom field, you can give the ID, any ID from your side, and just go to the details, give the field name. So this field name depends on the type of the field. So for example, if you want to make a field accept floating numbers, then you can select this. If you want field to accept varchar, then you can select any of these IDs over here. The another thing which is very important to note, that the field name, sorry, within the background portlet should always be unique. So for example, if you have, let's say, 4 fields, all these fields must have a unique field name. If the field name of any of the 2 fields or any field is same, then you might experience issues while doing the import, or maybe while adding the data through people profile. So make sure the field name is always unique. So if you have selected VFL D1 for any field, which is mainly used for accepting varchar values, then for the second field, you could select VFL D2. Yeah, so this is important to note. And the rest of the things, you don't need to make any changes. You can just save your configuration over here. So this is one way of creating, configuring the background portlet. The second way is through the data model XML, which is the backend. And if you don't have Employee Central enabled, then the only way left out for you is the data model XML. And as a customer, you will never have access to the backend of your environment or to the provisioning of your system. So you need to contact your implementation partner or consultant for adding background portlets or doing any changes in the existing background portlets. So now I'll quickly take you to the XML part and show you the configuration from the XML side. So this is the data model XML which I exported from provisioning. And over here, if you have to look for any background portlet, the quickest way would be to first know the XML ID of that background portlet. And once you know the XML ID, just put it over here, do Control F, and you'll get that background portlet. So right now I'm looking for inside work experience. And if you remember, there are four fields for within work experience portlet. Those four fields are start date, end date, title, and department. And the same you could see over here in the XML as well. This is the field name and the field ID, which has to be unique always. So as you could see, the field name is start date because this is a date type field. Over here, it's an end date. And over here, it's VLF D1 and VFL D2. So even these IDs has to be unique, and then you can define the maximum length of characters and the rest of the parameters. So this is how you you update your background portlet in the XML. In a similar way, let me just quickly show you other background portlet. Sorry, so this is a different background portlet whose ID is outside work experience, and the type ID is also different, as you could see. You provide the label over here. If you want to translate the label in different languages, so if your system has multiple languages, you can always translate the label in different languages which you have. And these are the various columns or the fields inside the previous employment background portlet, as you could see over here. Additionally, if you want to make any field as required as mandatory, you can also make it mandatory by adding this attribute. Yeah, so this is how we define the background portlet. Again, if in order to define the the custom background portlet, you can provide the ID, make sure it is unique. You can provide the type ID, make sure it is unique again, and the labels and the data field. So my advice would be copy the complete configuration of the standard background portlet and update the IDs and the field name over there so that you don't miss out any tags or the starting and the end label and so on, so that you don't receive any error while uploading the XML. So this is the configuration part of the background portlet. Now I'll quickly show you once you have configured the background portlet, you also need to make it visible in people profile, and before that you also need to make it, sorry, you also need to add it on in people profile because your environment, your data model XML might have, let's say, many background portlet or 100 of background portlets, but not all 100 you would want to be present in people profile. When employees are accessing their people profile, you might want only the relevant ones to be present on people profile, right? So if, first of all, let's see how you can add portlets in people profile view. This is configure people profile screen. And in order to add any background portlet, first you have to create the block. So as you could see, I have created this block. You can always edit the name. Just click on three dotted lines. It gives you the background element and gives you an option to select whatever background portlet you want to add. So I have added work experience and then give the name and save changes. So that's it. So this is how we add portlet in people profile. Once you have added in people profile, you can restrict the visibility of portlet based on certain roles. For example, if you want only managers to view this portlet and not employees, definitely you can restrict it through role-based permission. And let's see how we do that. So this is role-based permission right now. I'm in system admin role. And in order to restrict the portlet permission or the block permission, you can go to the employee data. It will have list of all the different types of portlets, different type of information, which I told you before, personal information, background, trend. And then depending on your requirement, you can restrict the visibility. So as you could see, it has a background section. And inside this, you will have list of all the background portlets. If you want to give only view access, just grant view permission and remove the edit access. So edit access over here. But if a role has both view and edit access, then directly from people profile, they can edit, they can update existing records as well as they can also create new records in the background portlet. So this is how we restrict the permission. Now let's go to the last piece of information, which is how you can update the information, update the background information through the import process. And for that, I'll first show you the export file so that you understand the format of the file. And then we use the same file for updating the information in the environment. So in order to export the background information, you can come to the admin center again and go to export extended user information. Over here, you get an option to export background specific data, or if you don't select this, then you would export all the background informations or which are present in your environment. So let's say if you have 50 background information, and if you don't select this checkbox, in the exported file, you will see record for those 50 background portlets. And if your system has many records, then the export file definitely would take time. It might take maybe more than 30 minutes as well. So for the testing purpose, since my demo has many records too, so for the testing purpose, we'll not export data for all the background portlets which I have. I'll export data only for one of the background portlets, which is work experience within company. So just select the background portlet and click on export extended data. So now I'm going to open the file. This is the exported file, and as you could see that in my demo environment, I have only two users who have information for inside work experience portlet. And you could see the start date, you could see the end date, title, department, and so on. So if there are multiple records, it will show you all the records in the exported file. Again, so this is the information only for one background portlet. If you don't select background portlet over there in the export option, then the exported file would have list of all the background portlets like inside work experience, previous employment, languages, and other background portlets. Okay. So depending on your requirement, if you, it's always good, it's always recommended to keep a regular export of the background information as a backup so that when you are doing the import, if in case, you know, anything goes wrong, you always have a backup in your system. Yeah. So for getting the backup, don't select this export checkbox. Just do the export. It might take some time depending on the number of records you have, and then you'll have the complete backup present with you. So this is how we export. Let's go to the import extended information and see how you can import the data back into the environment. This is the import extended user information page. And in order to import background information, you need to select background information over here. So these are different types of information which I told you before. But we have to select background information since we're gonna update background information only. Stop import. So these are the various additional file options which are very, very important to understand before you perform any type of import into the system. So let's see how it works. Specify additional file options. Stop import if invalid users found. So if you have put, so if you remember in the import file, you have user ID and assignment ID. So if a system finds that you have updated incorrect user ID, then the system will not update or not upload record for those group of employees. The import process will fail completely. Let's see second option which says import by incrementally adding data. So with this option, let's say you want to update data, you don't want to delete the existing data which is already present in the system, and along with that you want to just add the data which you have updated in the import file. So if that is the case, then you need to select this option which says import by incrementally adding the data. So it's just an addition on the existing records. It will not delete the records which are there in the system. Now let's see what this and the last option does. So import by overriding the existing data. So when you select this option, first of all, this option is recommended only when you have to import data for most of the employees in the organization. So when you select this option, you first need to export the information, make the changes in the exported files, whatever, if you want to remove the record or if you want to add more records to the existing records, and then do the import of the file or import of the record. With this option selected, the system will first delete all the records which are present in the system in the environment. So for example, let's take one user, Brooke Brown, and he has 3 records already in the environment in his people profile. And in the import file, you have fourth record for Brooke Brown, just fourth record, okay? And you have selected import by overwriting existing data. So with this option selected, system will delete all the records, all the 3 records of Brooke Brown, and will import only the record which is present in the import file. Okay, so this is very, very important to understand, and this will be applicable for all the users. So let's say your organization has thousands of employees, and and all those 1,000 employees have inside work experience data already present in the environment. Okay, now in the import file, you have included only 100 of employees with their work experience record. Now you do the import by selecting this option. The system will first delete the record, all the records of 1,000 employees, and will only import or will only upload the records which are present in the import file, which is 100 of records. So it is very, very important to understand that this option and even the last option will first delete the existing records for all the employees for that specific portlet which you have included over here. So if you include only one portlet in the import file, it will delete all the records for that specific portlet only. But if you include other portlets like outside work experience or languages or other portlets, then it will also delete record for all those portlets which are there in your import file and will record only the data which is present in your file, in your import file. So this is very, very important to understand. The difference between the second last and the last option is on the optimization of the performance only. So let's say you export the file first to keep the backup, and in that file, Brook Brown has three records A, B, C. Now you need to update only B and C record. You don't want to update anything on the A record, but at the same time, you want A record to be present in the system. So you update B and C record, keeping A as it is in the import file, and you do the import. So with that, if you select the last option, system will process it fast. System will not update the last modified date of A record because there is no change in A record. The changes are only in B and C record. So system will update only the last modified date of B and C record, and hence optimize the performance of the import. So that's the only difference. Otherwise, the overriding functionality remains same for the second last and the last overwriting data. So with this, that's everything for the import of the background information. If there is any question, just feel free to drop your comments. If you like this video, please click like button and subscribe to get notification for other videos in future. Now I will be posting more videos on the talent management suite, which would be on the trend information and personal information. But if you have any suggestion on any topic related to talent management shoot, feel free to drop your comment, and I'll try to record a video for the same. Thank you.